Welcome to the Midi Quest Bank Editor video tutorial. The Bank Editor's primary function is to allow you to order or reorganize patches in a bank, create your own banks, and use the patches within a bank to create new banks of patches intelligently for you. The bank is very simply set up. As you can see, you have all of your patches listed here. You can select any patch simply by clicking on it. And assuming that you have your instrument connected and auditioning enabled, then Midi Quest will automatically send each selected patch down to the instrument and then play a series of notes so that you can hear the sound that you've selected. Also, you'll see that if I go in and resize the window, sufficient tabs are automatically created so that I can continue to look at all of the elements within the bank. Patch organization is extremely easy. If you'd like to move a single patch, you can just click on it, hold the mouse button down, drag to where you would like to place it, and the patch will be moved to that location. Now, how the move occurs is controlled from the preferences, and you actually have one of three options. You can swap, paste, or insert the patch. Now, what happens in each of these instances is that swap will literally take the two patches and swap positions. Paste will take the patch you've selected and just paste it over top of whatever was there. And insert basically reorders all of the patches so that you can insert the patch and everything else moves either down or up to make room for the patch that you want to place there. One of the other main things you will be doing with the Bank Editor window is, of course, making your own bank editor. So what you can do is we'll just simply create another bank here. And if you want to move some of the patches here that you happen to like into your own custom bank, it's just a matter of selecting the patches you want. You can do it one at a time. Click, drag, drop, and the patch is placed where you want. Or you can select a group of patches. I've clicked the mouse, holding it down, released the mouse, and I made the selection. I can also select additional patches by holding down the Control key and clicking. And if I want to select a group of patches, I can actually click on the gray portion, drag the mouse, and release, and I have that group of patches. And I can now drag and drop that if I want, and they'll be added into the bank. If I wanted to put those patches in a particular location, then I could make, say, select that group of patches, come over here and select my destinations, and then when I drag and drop, those patches will actually be placed in the locations that I've selected. The other way I can do this is through a standard copy and paste, which I'll cover when we go through the menu items. Now, the majority of the button options you see here are echoed in the Bank Editor menu, with the exception of the second one. This is the Edit button. The Edit button serves two purposes. When the bank is on its own, as you see here, clicking this button will actually put a split in the window. Then if you select any patch within the bank, assuming that there is an editor for that bank, then the editor is opened and the patch is placed into the editor window. And so you can actually view each of your patches simply by clicking on that patch, and you'll see all of its settings in the split window. Now if you press this button and the bank is located within a set window, then the operation is a little bit different. Instead of the window splitting, the patch will actually be placed in a separate editor window within the set. Now, I'm going to remove the editor for the moment while we look at all of the other bank editor features. Now you can access the bank menu either by clicking on the bank menu option here, which will come up when the bank window is active, or I can always right-click in the bank window and get that same menu of options along with a number of additional ones such as transmit and get voices and save options, which are found elsewhere in the main menus. Now, I'll actually look at a couple of the other menu options first. If you look at the File menu, you can create a new bank by doing the following. Activate your Studio window, select the type of bank that you want, and then you can actually press the New button here, and you'll get a new bank of the selected type. In this case, it's a DX7 voice bank. Or, again, with this item selected, you can go to the File menu, choose New Editor, and you'll again get this bank displayed. If you want to open an existing bank from disk, you can do this a number of ways as well. You can simply press the Open File button and you'll get a file selector here. You'll see a list of all the different instruments that you have installed, and then it's just a matter of going to whatever instrument, say an N01W, find the bank that you want. Let's pick up a combi bank, and you can open it up. Now, if you know exactly what type of bank you want, say you do want a DX7 bank, there's an easier way to do it. You can click on this little button here, and it's context sensitive, so it knows you have voice bank selected here, so when you click to load a file, it will automatically put you in the right directory and filter on the right kind of file extension so that you will just see your DX7 banks. Choose the bank, and it opens up. And then, of course, you have the open option from the File menu, which again places you in the general MQ data folder. Once you have a bank open on the window, you can use Close to close that window. The Save option will tell you what kind of data you're currently saving. That's the active window, and it will save it given the current file name, which right now is test, or if you do Save As, then you'll get a file selector. And in this case, again, Midi Quest is smart. It will automatically, by default, put you into the appropriate folder for the given instrument, in this case the motif ES, and it will automatically append the correct extension, in this case UR1 for the user1 bank. Print will print off a bank display to the printer if you'd like to do that. Now let's look at the Midi menu as it relates to the bank. There are a number of options here. Here the first one is transmit this bank, and what this option will do will transmit this entire bank back out to the instrument. So you can completely configure the entire bank and replace it with this new bank if you so choose. The next option you see is grayed out right now, and it says transmit selected patches to bank. Well, there aren't any selected patches, so let's select a couple of patches. Now if I choose this option, you can see it's active and it says transmit the selected patches. What this will literally do is send this patch to location A04 in user 1 bank, this patch to location A10 in the user 1 bank, and this patch to location A15. Now, not all instruments are capable of receiving individual patches into a bank at specific locations. So this option will only be available for those instruments that can. In the case of, say, the DX7, you can only send the entire bank down to the instrument at a time. So in the case of the DX7, this option will not be available. Cancel transmit. If you start off a large transmit and you decide that you don't want to continue, you can choose this option and it will give you the option of choosing which ports you want to stop transmission on, and any data that's currently queued to be sent out to that port will be stopped. Midi Quest does all of its transmission out to the instrument in the background, so you can actually develop some fairly large queues or backups of data that's waiting to be sent to an instrument, and there may be situations when you decide you want to stop sending, and this is how you do it. And the final option that relates specifically to this window is this one here, and it says get selected voice bank user 1 elements from the Yamaha motif. So again, if I have specific elements selected in a bank, and let's actually create a new bank here, I can now create a new bank, select a number of specific locations, and I can go and say get those, and Midi Quest will load only the patches from those specifically selected locations. Again, this feature is limited to those instruments which are capable of doing this, and not all of them are. So again, to use the DX7 example, you can't do this. You can either load the bank in its entirety or not load the bank at all. Now, if I have no patches selected, you'll see that this option changes, and Midi Quest now wants to load the entire bank. So I'm going to start that, and a motif has a large amount of data, so as you can see it would take quite a while to load the entire bank. So I'm just going to cancel out of this. You see it's loaded up, what is that, about 1/8 of the bank in that amount of time. Let's close this up. We don't need to save the changes. And let's activate our bank window, and we'll have a look at all of the various options that are available to the bank editor. The first is undo. As long as you have the keep backup option selected in preferences for the bank editor, then every edit that you make to this bank editor, or in this bank editor, can be undone. So if you just choose undo, you'll actually get a list of each of the operations that you've applied to the bank, and you can step back and you can choose to move to a previous location. The next option in the bank edit menu is copy. So here I can copy a number of patches, and I can make that a contiguous group or non-contiguous. I then choose copy, and once I've copied these patches, I can choose to paste them into another bank if I so wish. So I will select some entries here, choose paste, and those copied patches have now been pasted into this alternate bank. Copy sysx as text. What this will do, if I select it, is it will actually take the entire bank of sysx data and it will convert it into text and copy it to the Windows clipboard. So if I create a notepad window, as I've just done here, and go and choose paste, what you have here is the sysx equivalent of the selected data. You can then pick this up and, if you want, say paste it into your sequencer if you want to have the sequencer, say, send out the sysx data. For example, Sonar. Their sysx windows, you can open up, paste in sysx data as text. You can do the same thing in Performer on the Mac as two examples. I'm just going to close this up because we don't need it. The next item in the bank edit menu is paste, which we've already looked at. Paste will work in a number of ways. If you have patches copied to the bank editor clipboard and choose paste and don't have any location selected, as you've seen before, Midi Quest will just find items in the bank which currently are not assigned to a patch, and it will paste them into those locations. Or if you have specific locations selected, then it will copy into those locations, overwriting what's already there if that location already had a patch assigned to it. The next option is swap, and it's much akin to paste, except, as you might gather, you can choose a number of patches, and here what you do is choose copy the patches to the clipboard, and remember their locations. You can then choose additional patches, and instead of choosing paste, you choose swap, and what will happen here is the patches that you've chosen in this location will be swapped with the patches in this location, and the swap will happen with the smallest number of patches. So if you choose 4 here and chose 8 here, only 4 patches would actually end up being swapped. You can also swap patches between banks if you wish. Now the next option, clear, does exactly as you might surmise. You just select whatever patches you want to clear, choose the clear option, and Midi Quest will zero out those patches, basically initialize them to a null state. Select all does exactly as you might expect. It selects all of the patches in the bank. Restore As long as you have the backup option selected in Preferences, then Restore is like Undo, but instead of stepping back through your edits and selecting a particular edit point, you can select any locations that you want, choose Restore, and those locations. Restore is similar to Undo, but different. In the case of Restore, as long as you are keeping backups, you can actually choose any particular locations that you would like, and you can say to specifically restore those patches to their starting state, to the state they were in when you loaded the data from disk. Keep in mind, if you create a new patch bank and start working with it and start loading patches in, Restore is actually going to restore that patch to a 0 or null state, because when you created the bank, there was nothing in it. Rename does exactly what you would expect, I think. It allows you to rename the selected patches. So I just call this name 1. It automatically steps to the next patch, which you call name 2. Steps to the next one as name 3, and steps to the next one as name 4. Edit. It gives you a couple of different options. First off, you can open an edit window for a particular patch. So if I choose that patch, choose Edit, the next option is found in the Edit menu, and it is Edit Window. And what it does is it takes the selected patch and it opens it in its own editor window. Now at this point, the data has been copied from the bank into this patch editor, and the patch editor exists as a completely separate entity. So if you close this window up, the changes aren't saved back to the patch bank. You need to save this patch separately, or copy it back into the bank or into some other window yourself if you don't want to save the patch separately. Remember, if you want to say edit this patch and have it stored back into the bank, then the best way to do it is just to hit the split button to open the editor. You can make whatever changes you want to Madhouse, and then when you close up the split, the changes will be stored back in the editor. The next option under the Edit menu is sysx window, and what this does is it takes the entire bank of sysx data and copies it into a sysx view window if you, for whatever reason, want to look at the data in a hexadecimal decimal type view. The next option is auto name, and what this does is give you the opportunity, if for whatever reason you want to quickly rename all of the patches in the bank, it just generates a set of sequential names with numbers like this. I will, I think, go back and restore that option. So we're looking at some nice names. This one probably isn't used by too many people, but we will use it here for very fast testing purposes. import patch names only is a very specific special option that you're unlikely to use very often. What it allows you to do is, in rare instances, there are patch banks where the names of the patches are not built into the data. That is, what you get out of the instrument has no names. Now, in those situations, you can allocate namespace within a bank within Midi Quest, and you can assign your own names, and those names are then saved with the bank. And from that point on, you can work with names. Now, you run into the situation where if you make a whole, maybe you've transferred a bank down to the instrument, you make a set of changes on the instrument, and then you reload that bank back from the instrument. Now, in that situation, you're faced with having to type in all of the names for that bank again. Well, you don't actually have to do that, because instead you can use this option, and it will only be enabled for banks of this type where the namespace is stored only within Midi Quest. You choose this, you'll get a file selector up, and it will allow you to choose a bank from disk. And what Midi Quest will do is it will copy the names stored in the bank on the disk to the namespace in the currently loaded bank, so you can easily get your names bank back for the bank. And the final option here is settings. This opens the settings dialog where you can enter comments, assign the MIDI in and MIDI out ports used by this data, set the COM channel used for the data, set the MIDI channel for auditioning, set the patch number if that option's available, set up your patch bay controls if that's applicable, if you're using a patch bay, not a multi-channel MIDI interface, but a standalone patch bay that is connected to the computer through a MIDI cable, not a USB cable, but a MIDI cable. And you can assign keys to this bank, keeping in mind that anytime you copy a patch from this bank into the library, each patch that you copy over will take these keys as part of the copying process. The next sub-option is set patches to transmit, and this is a group of selections which work together for those situations only where the bank can upload and download patches individually. So as we saw earlier, you could say, all right, let's create a new bank, and I only want to upload these 4 patches. Now, for this type of bank, what you can do is specifically say, when there is a general bank transmit command, I don't want to send the whole bank, I just want to send a group of specific patches. So this allows me to say, all right, when there is a bank transmit command, I am going to transmit all of the patches in the bank. The next option is selected only, and in this case, a transmit will set, when you select this option, a transmit will send only those patches which are currently selected. So in this case, it would be A4 through A12 plus C08 and C11. Now, this is extremely useful in the situation where you say want to send 1 or 2 combinations plus only the patches that you need to play those combinations at the same time. Instead of having to send the whole bank, you can send just the combinations you need plus their associated patches. The next option is unselected only. That's the inverse of selected only. If you want to send most of the patches in the bank except for a couple, you could select those few patches you don't want, choose this option. It's just a little bit faster. And the final option is select patches to transmit. Now, what this does is the inverse. It shows you the patches that are currently selected for a transmit, so you can see what the current state is. Right now, all of them are. And for example, to show you how this works, you can select these patches, choose selected only. Now choose a group at random and go back and select this option, and you can see that it is this group of patches that are chosen to be sent. The next selection of options are the randomize options, and there are 5 of them. The first option is mix, and it works on 2 patches. So you need to select 2 patches, choose mix, and you'll get a slide bar as you see here. And essentially this allows you to provide a bias as to which patch you want the newly created bank of patches to sound like. Everything is done through randomization. For each parameter in the patch, you generate a random number which determines whether you choose the parameter either from the first patch, which is star drop, or the second patch, which is sync ARP2. With the slider to the left, you stand a greater chance of the parameter being picked from star drop 2. Move the slider this way, greater chance to draw the parameters from sync ARP2. And press the option, you get an entirely new bank of patches, and you can click on each one to audition it if you have audition enabled. Right now I've got it disabled. The next randomize option is mix all, and mix all allows you to select any number of patches, and Midi Quest will create a new bank of patches based on these selected patches. Now, in this case, there is an equal chance of the parameter being chosen from any one of these 7 selected patches. And I have autosave turned on, so I'm going to jump in here and turn that off. So as I was saying, there's an equal chance that the parameter is drawn from any one of the 7 selected patches. So as a result, the more patches that you have selected, the less the likelihood of your newly generating patches sounding like a particular patch in the group. The next randomize option is blend. Blend once again works with only 2 patches, and in this case blend is similar to mix. However, the difference is with mix, each single parameter in the patch, a random number is generated to determine which patch is going to be the source. With Blend, Blend works with larger pieces of the patch. Now this has a tendency to take intact chunks, say an envelope or a set of oscillator settings, takes that intact piece from the source patch and copies it into the destination patch. So you have, or should have, pieces that sound much more like the source patches. Gen 4 requires 4 patches. And I'll choose the button this time. And what you get is a dialog. Now, within this grid, anytime I click the mouse, I generate a dot that represents a new patch that is going into a bank that is currently being built. So I can click once, I can drag, and the way this works is that the position within this grid determines what the generated sound is going to sound like based on one of 2 methods. For mix, it's based on probability. For blend, it's actually a generated value. So with mix, if you click around Bell Shop, you stand a much greater chance of the new patch sounding something like Bell Shop, or if you click near Sunny, again, it's the new patch there is going to has a better chance of sounding like Sunny because the probabilities are biased towards the patch in that area. If you choose blend, then the location of the click precisely defines what the patch sounds like. That means if you were to click on the very same location twice, you would get the exact same patch sound. And the reason for this is that the program actually looks at the position and says, okay, for this parameter, we're going to take X% of the parameter values from Sunny, X% from Vintage Art, X% from Bell Shop, and a given percent from Heaven Sent, and we're going to pull that. We're going to generate the new value based on the percentage of each value. So the position completely determines it. You click in the middle, and you would actually pull 25% from each value. If you were to click right here, you would actually take 25% from Vintage Art, 25% from Bell Shop, and 50% from Sunny, and 0% from Heaven Sent, just because over on the precise right end, you've got a 0 value here. You can reverse that. So you can create, you can mix. You have a great deal of control over mixing the various sounds together. The final option here, if you check this box, you're finished creating patches, you just want to get things done. Click the box once, and the next click will finish off and complete an entire patch, an entire bank of randomized patches, which you can then audition. Now, final randomization option is morph. And morph works on 2 patches. And what it does, 2 patches and one additional thing, you have to have the bank set up in split mode because the morphing actually requires use of the editor. So choose 2 patches, go to randomize, The final randomized option is morph. However, morph requires the selection of 2 patches and must be executed from within a set. So since we're using an individual patch bank here, we'll wait for the morph example and place it in the set tutorial. The next submenu is organize, and the first entry in organize is sort by name. Choose your sort option, and Midi Quest will do an alphabetic sort of all your patches in the bank. The next option is rotate range up, and this actually allows you to move a set of patches either up or down in order to make space to, say, insert another patch into your bank. So say you wanted to add a patch at location F01, then you could click on F01 and select all the patches to the end of the bank, choose rotate range down, and Midi Quest has moved each of the patches down one location and taken the patch at the bottom and moved it up into the first location. Now, if you wanted to take a patch from, say, another bank and insert it specifically in this location, you could, and you've kept the order of your remaining patches. It's important to remember that this operation actually applies from the first patch to the last patch. Even if there are patches in between that aren't selected, they'll still be moved. So in this example, Midi Quest will actually rotate all of the patches from C09 through F09. And this time I will choose the rotate range up, and in this case all of the patches will have been moved up one location, and Funkstar is now located at the bottom entry. Invert behaves the same way. It operates on all of the patches from the first selected to the last selected patch, and the first to the last selected patch plus any unselected patch in between. And invert simply inverts the patch order. So C09 will go to F09, F09 will go to C09, C10 will go to F08, F08 will go to C10, and so on. And you can see that simply by choosing invert. And the last option in the Organize menu is Print Cross-Reference. Now, Print Cross-Reference is also an option that requires that the bank be within a set. And what the cross-referencing does is it produces a printout that the last option in the Organize menu is Print Cross-Reference. And Print Cross-Reference is really related to operations within sets. So I'm going to quickly open up a set window here, and I'm going to jump into a performance bank to give you your explanation of how this works. If you look here, print cross-reference. Each performance, if you were to look at it, references up to 16 different voices. Now, what print cross-reference does is it actually looks through every single one of the performances in this bank, and for each performance it collects a list of the voices used by the performances. It then cross-references those voices and actually produces a list by voice of what performances use that voice. So you could say for voice bank, for the user voice bank for patch 1, performance 1, 2, and 3, use voice 1. Voice 2 might be used by performances 6, 7, and 8, and so on. And it gives you a nice complete chart of the interrelationship between the voices and the performances, and prints that out to your printer. Now, after organize, we have several simple audition options. You have a menu option to play a tone's chord, an option to play a tone sequence, and the final audition operation here is actually a query that looks at the driver and determines whether auditioning is available for the bank or not. The reason we've inserted this is in very rare circumstances it is actually not possible to audition the voices in a particular bank to the instrument. And you can use this option to determine whether this is one of those few instances. It's maybe a sum total of 10 instruments out of the 650 that Midi Quest currently supports. The export menu contains options to export the bank's sysx data in a number of formats, and the bank's patch names in a number of different formats. There is a separate video tutorial that covers these options because they are common to a number of different windows. Find actually allows you to enter a partial patch name, and the program will find the first entry that matches what you enter and will select it. And if you want to look for the next entry that matches that criteria, you can just choose Find Again, and I'm using the equivalent. You can see that there are just 2 entries where star is an element of the patch name. This is obviously useful if you have a large bank and you are looking for a particular patch, you happen to know the name, but you just can't find it easily. Find Again steps through them. Move to is common to all of the data file windows, and instead of dragging and dropping files between the different windows, which you can do, move to instead, and you need at least 2 data windows, so I will create a new collection just for this example. Move to will list all of the other available windows that can receive the data selected in the window you're currently working in, and will allow you to send the data to that alternate window. So I can just click OK, and Midi Quest has moved this entire voice bank into the collection. And here we have repeats of options that you've already seen. The transmit and get options are also found in the MIDI menu, and the save and print options are found in the file menu. Thank you for viewing the bank video demo.